Oh, really? All right, we're almost. Have you already gotten this side over here? Oh, okay. Well, I'll give a minute before so that you can get these kind of passed out a little bit. You talking Texas? Oh man, yeah. Oh, football fields down there. That's what gets me, cause like bigger. Oh yeah, Texas football, man. Yeah. We can just sit them back there, I guess. Let's just sit them on that outside table. Texas. I'm not doing that. I don't know if you mean people from Texas. Oh man. All right. All right. So we are about ready, I think. What do we still need to pass out the outlines up this way? Is that where? Okay. Okay. Philip's coming. It's okay. Philip's coming. I think so. Yeah. So I don't have. I've got on. Well, no, I don't have any copies of that left now. The worksheet from last time. Go ahead and we'll look at that first thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Done.
So we'll do that first thing. But before we jump into that, Brother Cleveland, do you mind leading us in prayer as we get started? Amen. All right, go ahead and pull out this from last week, the lesson 1 worksheet, and we'll go over that. Some of these things we didn't do inside of class. That's okay, because that's kind of the deal with some of this stuff. If you don't have a good Bible software, let me encourage you to get Logos, Logos, Logos Bible software. eSword is out there, and that is free. If you download it onto your computer, you can get that for free. I personally, I use eSword, but I also use Logos, Logos. It's a blue little app icon. And it's got a lot of good resources, and some of these things, now you do have to pay for some of it. Like there's some of it's just free, but there's some things that you pay for on it. And I tell you what, if you are serious about being a Bible student, it is well worth your money. And if there's something on there that seems quite pricey to you, they actually do payment plans. Which I have done over the years, because sometimes I've gone, I need to teach this class. It has a lot of language stuff in it, and so I need to go and get all the language suite. And so I'd go and I would get it, and it'd be like $500. And well, at the time I didn't have $500, but they let me do some payments of like $50, and so I was able to do that. And they have different options, but that to me is the best software out there. I've looked at a bunch, and there's there's bright sides to a lot of different ones, but the most well-rounded, I believe, is Logos, and I use that for a lot of different stuff. Which eSword is free. I think there's like a base thing for Logos that's free, but I think the eSword free is better than the Logos free.
Really likes it, so if you want to know about that, ask Mitchell, because he really likes it.
Yeah, I use that one a lot. Yes. Yeah, it's E-sword. Yeah, matter of fact, I know you can't really see it, but they have it on your tablet, on your phone, and I use that a lot. Why I like the Logos stuff is that if you do put a little bit of money into it, there are a lot of benefits. It takes me a lot less time to do certain searches and research in general whenever I look at Logos. But yeah, for your basic stuff, eSword is pretty amazing. It's pretty easy.
We were just doing a chapter last night on Mitchell was looking up the root of some of the words, like just to see how it was used. I'm pretty sure you can use eSword to do that. So it's not like
Right.
Hebrew.
Right.
It's a really good one.
Yeah. I started off on eSword. That's all. Whenever I didn't want to put any money into anything, I started off on eSword. And you can actually purchase some things on eSword, but I've never done that. I just have used the free stuff that they have, which is plenty. I think the app you have to pay for, but again, for a serious Bible student, these things are pretty easy tools. And paying for the app on like a tablet or your phone, I think it was something like $6.99 or something like that. It wasn't much, and the value that you get out of it's pretty big. So yeah, for the first year of preaching school, that's all I used was eSword, and then I saw someone using Logos, and I was like, well, what is that? And they showed it to me, and I thought, I've got to have that because that is pretty amazing. So, but yeah, some of the things that when you're doing this work that we're not doing inside of class, if you have something like eSword, it's going to make it easier. But anyway, let's jump into it. Let's look at some things here. The first thing I want to look at is number 1. What is the greatest book? That's the Bible. All right, these are on our cards. Some of these are on our cards. What does Bible mean? Book. All right. Who wrote the Bible? About 40 men. All right, so now speaking of that, we talked about how these different people come from different backgrounds. Now that's the next set of questions here. What did Nehemiah do? Yeah, he was a cupbearer. Yeah. Solomon, who was he? He was a king. Matthew was what? Tax collector. Now Paul, this one's kind of a finicky one for me. Paul was what? He was a tent maker. Also, what was he before that? He was in line to be a rabbi, So he was an intellectual. That's kind of a misnomer to me. He's a tent maker, but I'm sorry, but when you think about who Paul is, that guy is quoting poets of his day. He was well read. He was a very learned person. He's not just a lowly tent maker. He would have been a rabbi under the Jewish system, but he, of course, converted. He became a Christian.
You can almost describe him as a zealot, too.
But that was his new identity as a Christian.
Right. Yeah.
Jewish zealot.
Yeah. My point of making that is we're talking about men from different backgrounds, and when you say tent maker, you go, tent maker. That doesn't sound like he's very intelligent, though Paul is super intelligent. Whenever, for those that were here and saw when the Memphis School of Preaching was here last week, Dan Cates teaches Greek. And every time would say, "Hey, we're gonna pull up a passage. We're gonna translate this, and comes from," and he names off a Pauline epistle, and every single one of us would be like, "Ugh," because Paul, when he writes, his sentences are so complex. Like he is such an intelligent writer that when he writes something like you and I we'll just write something and we might have a little pithy sentence and just be short and sweet and to the point. Paul, so you don't realize this until you start looking at the Greek, but you'll have several verses that you'll have 5 or 6 verses in a passage of scripture that Paul wrote that's all just one sentence. And so when you're having to translate one sentence, that's kind of a big deal when it comes to Paul. Number 4, the Bible was completed in how many years? 1600 years, and covers a period of 4,000 years. That's right. The Bible contains proven contradictions. True or false? False, right? You know what's a contradiction? What was that?
There is none.
That's right. There aren't any. But what would a contradiction be? What's? Yeah. So so the Bible saying in one passage one thing, another passage another thing, and those two things kind of cancel each other out. The Bible doesn't do that. There are supposed contradictions, but I'll tell you what, I've studied a bunch of those with people over the years, and I have not found a single one that has ever been valid. They're all kind of these little misunderstandings is what it is. Someone misunderstands a passage, and when they misunderstand this passage, it looks like it contradicts another passage, and it just isn't true.
All contradictions are man-made.
Right. That's right.
How would they press as long as you Rick Lyons or Tyler did a whole video on that and all those supposed contradictions.
Yeah. Yes. Now, as a matter of fact, if you go also to their website, apologeticspress.org, I think, but you go to their website, and on there they actually have a section where you can click on it and see alleged contradictions, and they'll go through each one and answer the arguments on those. So that's really good. I've used that from time to time. That's good stuff. I don't think I've seen that video in particular, but I'm sure it's good. What does foreknowledge mean? Foreknowledge. So that's just a simple knowing something before it happens. Yeah. I have pointed that out a lot. I believe that foreknowledge is, and not just prophecy, but the Bible has foreknowledge in it throughout, which I know in essence is prophecy, but some things, God tells the people that if they march around Jericho, they do the things that he has asked them to do, the walls are going to fall down. And so he knows that they're going to fall down. He knows what's going to happen. It comes to fruition. And then I love this because people will say, oh, well, that didn't really happen. And then archaeologically we find it. And you go, oh, okay, so yeah, it did happen. We'll come to that back to that in just a minute. There is scientific foreknowledge in the Bible, things that we just didn't know through science. And we'll just go through this pretty rapid fire. Job 26:7. What do we see there? Job 26:7. You see, the thought of, what was that? Yeah, he hung the earth on nothing. So God has placed the solar system. You might even, insinuate gravity there and things like that. Job 38:16. I like this one. Job 38:16. Anybody got that one? Yeah, so we've got freshwater springs in the ocean. At the time that this was written, nobody knew that because we hadn't made submarines yet. We hadn't made it to where you could scuba dive and find the stuff out. And there's nobody that could go to that depth anyway. But there are freshwater springs that come up out of the ocean. And so nobody could have known that, and that's the whole point when God is telling that to Job, remember? He's like, well, did you know? Did you know that this was the case? Well, how could he know? He couldn't walk the depths of the ocean. And of course, that was the whole point. Yeah. Isaiah 40 and verse 22. What do we see there? Yeah. And what else? I think there's a particular thing here that we're looking for. Yeah, the circle of the earth. Well, just the fact that the earth is round. It's you would think that would be something solved, but now we got a lot of flat earthers these days.
All of that, obviously, till the 15th century, that was even religious doctrine.
Yeah.
Flat earth.
Yep. I heard someone argue, and I don't know where they got their source from, but years ago I heard people say, oh, well, they really didn't believe that the earth was flat, even though there's like lots of evidence for that. And now I wonder what that person's saying, that there's a lot of people today going, well, the earth is flat, Yeah, it's funny, yeah. A round disc with a dome. Nice. Yeah. Well, I heard someone say, well, they had a friend that was a flat earther, and they said that they would walk to the edge of the earth to prove it true. And they said, well, I guess they'll come around. All right, Genesis 6 and verse 15. You have the ark here. Yeah, the first floating transport. And I love this because it is built to the same specs that people still build ships to today. It's the perfect ratio, is what it is. Very, very interesting. The Bible is also historically accurate. And the Hittites are mentioned over 40 times. Really, it's almost 50. It's 48 times. See, if you have Logos, you can look that up. But it's 48 times. And critics have denied the existence of a people called the Hittites. But let's read this little section here. In the late 1800s, A.H. Sayce discovered inscriptions in Syria that he designated as Hittite. Then in 1906, Hugh Winkler excavated Bagakskoy. Yeah, there we go. I like the way you said it. Turkey, and discovered that the Hittite capital had been located on that very site. His find was all the more powerful because of the more than 10,000 clay tablets that were found in the ancient city's library, and that contained the society's law system, which eventually came to be known as the Hittite Code. Now, I love archaeology. It's awesome. I probably would have. I was really close to getting a degree in geology just so that I could go and do that. But the Middle East is really not safe, and you have to go there to do that. And I had small children at the time, and I decided it's probably not the brightest idea. But it is just an interesting subject. You want to know what happens over and over and over again when it comes to these archaeological finds? What happens is somebody go, well, just like this, well, the Hittites, they didn't exist. If the Hittites were such a big deal, they're mentioned over 40 times in the Bible, they're such a big deal, we would have found something about them. And then it's like, oh, well, we found an entire city. Okay. We found 10,000 tablets here that attests to this. And then similarly, they're like, well, Song of Solomon, you got that as a major writing of one of your biggest kings. And then you go and look at the history of Solomon, and you think about Solomon and all that he did. And then you they're like, well, he doesn't exist. If he existed, there'd be some sort of evidence. And guess what they find? They find evidence in archaeology of Solomon. They have all kinds of stuff, all kinds of. I love that. I can't wait whenever someone starts denying something archaeologically. I'm like, just wait 50 years, because somebody's going to find something, and it's going to prove them wrong. It just happens over and over and over again. How many parts are in the Bible? Got the Old and New Testament, right? Old and New Testament. And how many books are in the Bible? 66. How many books in the Old Testament? All right, now here's where we discussed, and you can do whatever you want to with it. But there are 5 books of what? Law. 12 books of. 5 books of. And then 17 books of. And if you're a little crazy like me, go back and just say 17 books of history. Yeah, it just, it just makes sense to me. That's why I do. It just makes sense. All right, moving on here. How many books in the New Testament? 27. And then you have 4 gospel accounts. Now I heard someone say accounts. That was good. Brian Mills, kudos. Appreciate. You know what? I appreciate you tonight only. Yeah. So gospel accounts. Why? I try to be precise in my language when I'm saying this. A lot of people go, well, those are just the Gospels. What does gospel mean? The good news. How many good newses are there? There's just one. So when you're looking at the Gospels, that's not really accurate. It's the gospel accounts, because there are 4 different gospel accounts. There's one good news, the good news of Jesus Christ. Those are found in 4 different books. So, same thing. Precision of language for you Giver fans. Precision of language. So let's see here. Moving on, you have 1 book of. Yeah, Acts of the Apostles. Yeah, church history is fine. Yeah. You've got the Acts of the Apostles. I just kind of stick with that. The only reason I stick with that is, well, that's the earliest name of that book, the Acts of the Apostles. They probably did want church history or something like that here, though. There's only 2 blanks, but I put Acts of the Apostles. And then there's 22 books to churches called epistles or letters. That's what the word epistle means. Yeah. So there we go. All right, we are through with that. Good job, guys. And you got the one for next week, and we'll do that next time. All right, so let's look at some things, and we'll just kind of go rapid fire through this. And if we can, we may not have time. Actually, now I'm looking at the time. Probably don't, but I was going to add some stuff to end this class. But we're talking about the creation. And in the creation, does anybody know the song? I asked the kids on Sunday morning, and they don't know the song. There's a song for the days of creation to help you remember it. Ask Bryson. Yeah. So it is pretty simple, but I'm not going to teach it to you because I'm not going to patronize you. But plus I don't want to get up here and sing through my class. But what was it? Yeah. It just so you know, like the first line is day one, God made light when there was none, and so it rhymes. You can understand it. I'm not doing day 2. Don't even. I told you I wasn't going to do it, but I did the first one. All right. So the first day, of course, I just said it, was light. Genesis 1, 3 through 5. And this is good. When you've got those cards, you can look at these and just keep going over them. I'm excited about this because I'm challenging myself to know not only what's happening at these times, but the Bible verses that correlate with this. Because whenever I preach and I say something about the creation, I might even say a specific aspect about the creation, and I'll go, well, having Genesis 1. I'll just say that. But here, we're being very specific, Genesis 1, 3 through 5. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning one day. Now, another part of this, and this I think I kind of skipped over this on this there in this lesson, but part of what we need to know, which we already know, is Genesis 1:1. And in the first part of it, actually, that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And when I think about that, now I was actually looking through some material, and someone said that people think that God created time first, but that's erroneous because God is eternal. And I thought that's weird, because those two things don't actually go together. Well, God's eternal, so set that aside. But the very first thing he has to do is he's created time. He's created a starting point. And it is furthered every single time you see something created. At the end of every one of these passages, it says, and there was evening and there was morning. How do we describe a day? Well, every day we wake up in the morning, and then we go through the day, and it's evening, and the sun sets. Now, the Jews were very particular about this. They had a certain time in the day, and that was it. After that, it was the next day, even though it, of course, it was more along with the sunset than anything. But you have morning and evening, and that consists of a day. But I think that this is interesting here because there's something else that's going on. We're going to get to that in just a minute. So let's.
What was the source of this light?
Well, I don't know in particular, but God, yeah. I've heard people saying, I've heard people say a lot of different things. And I haven't really studied that, so I don't know if there's a verse that says something specifically about that. I don't know. Does anybody know? I don't know of one. I wasn't sure there was, but again, God is light, so maybe that was it. But again, this is just there's a creation here of these things, and it goes beyond our comprehension, because it's not until a couple of days later that the sun, moon, and stars are put together. So you go, well, what's light? We think about light, and hold on. Let's hold that thought and let's wait a second. But let's continue on this one thing. Go ahead. Well, God makes everything. Yeah. It's definitely an aspect of it. But I think, I'm about to get into some of the stuff that I'm not quite ready for. So let's get to the second one. And the second day is the firmament. In Genesis 1, 6 through 8, it says, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning, a second day. Now, since we got this handy-dandy dry erase board here, I'm just going to give you a little illustration as to what this kind of was. So let's just say that this is the earth, and I can't draw a perfect circle, so you're going to have to get over that. But this, let's just say that this is, you know what, we can make this a little bit easier on ourselves. So you've got the land up down here, And you're going to have to get over that too. And then here, let's just call this the firmament here. And right here is a massive vapor barrier. Now we know this because of verses like this, but also when it rains, this is broken up. This right here is broken up, and it allows all of this rain to fall down. And that's why we have massive amounts of rain. Also, this is blocking out the sun.
Would that not be considered the atmosphere?
Right, yeah. So this vapor barrier is blocking out the sun. What is important about that? So first of all, this is creating a high pressure system right here, which helps a person to heal faster. Also, you're not getting radiation from the sun, which what does radiation from the sun do? It kills you over time. You know, it is aging you. And so this whole thing going on right here is the reason that people are living for so long. After the flood, you have no more of this up here. You know, all this is gone. And then what are we seeing after the flood as far as ages are concerned? Shorter. They're just going down and going down and going down. So, one of these days maybe we should do some lessons on the flood. I've done an entire series just on this, of just a quarter on this, and it's just a fascinating subject. But anyway, gotta get back over here and finish this stuff up. Something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So, if you are really nerdy, which I don't know of how many, Jake, you're gonna love this book. I'm just kidding. I'm so just kidding. But if you are, how about I just humble myself? If you're like me and you're a little nerdy, I've got a book about like this, and it's got some fine print in it, and it is called The Genesis Flood. And it is all about this stuff, and it is super cool. It is a little bit of a dry read, but if you completely nerd out on that, it's not so dry. So, you know, if you like that kind of stuff, it's really good. All right. Apologetics Press? Yeah, they've actually got a VBS about the flood. That's good. The third day, you got sea, land, and vegetation. Genesis 1, 9 through 13. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth put forth grass, herbs yielding seed, and fruit trees, bearing fruit after the kind, wherein is the seed thereof, upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, herbs yielding seed after their kind, and trees bearing fruit, wherein is the seed thereof, after their kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, a third day. All right, so as a transition here, you have on the third day, things are starting. You know, you've got things that really need sunlight, right? You've got the sun, you got the sea, and you got land, and then you got vegetation growing on the land here. And so, but when you get to the fourth day is the sun, moon, and stars. Now I want to talk about these together. Let's look at this passage. Verses 14 through 19, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, a fourth day. So you have, now I want to bring this up because, you know, when you have people that say, you have a theistic evolutionist. What is What is a theistic evolutionist? Anybody describe that?
Basically, it's someone who thinks that God created it, but also that the evolution was involved in his creation.
Yeah. So, this, of course, is someone who believes in evolution. And this is the Greek word for God, so it would be, a theist would be someone who believes in God. Now, a theistic evolutionist wants to put those two things together. They want to have somebody that they believe God created the earth, but that maybe he got it started and then it started rolling along and it evolved. Some even say, some of these people even, they are considered, not all of them, some of them are considered deists, kind of the same thought process. God starts things in motion and then kind of steps back and lets stuff happen. But a theistic evolutionist believes that God created the world, but he did that through evolution. In this, they'll say, well, these days, they'll go into the New Testament and say, a day is as 1,000 years, right? What's the problem with that? What's the rest of that verse? And 1,000 years as a day. The whole point is, to God, time is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. And so when they say that, that's number one, that's wrong. But so what would happen? Let's look at day 3. You got sea, land, and vegetation. So vegetation, let's take that one specifically. Vegetation is created, and then the sun is created next. You've got now. Yeah. And again, like when they're talking about these time periods, like, so yeah, vegetation is going to die off if it doesn't have the sunlight. There's another aspect of it too, is that they'll look at this and this time has stretched on and there'll be lots of darkness and lots of light, but either one of those things just is not going to fly. Why? Because of that whole vegetation thing. Either the earth cools off to a point that, it can't sustain life, or it burns up to a point that it can't sustain life. So we only have do we have any time left? I guess. Okay. Look at this guy. He's a scholar and a gentleman. All right. The 5th day, fish and fowls, in Genesis 1:20 through 23. And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth and open firmament of heaven. And God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moveth, wherewith the waters swarmed, after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, a 5th day. So now you have the fish and the fowl, just quickly so that we can go on through this. The 6th day, you have animals and man created. On the 7th day, God rests, not because he's exhausted, but because he chose the time to do that. People have used this verse and taken it out of context and said, well, see, God's not all powerful because he needed to rest after all that creating. Now, he just spoke it into existence. And it's the same thing that you've done if you've ever worked on a project and you stand back and admire it for a little bit and go, man, that was good.
That was all foreknowledge that him tying us back into the law.
Right. Right.
That's everything.
Yeah.
Well, it's all punishment in our hands.
Right.
The King James Genesis 1:1 says, God created heaven and the earth, and the rest of heaven. Is there a reason why King James heaven and the rest heaven?
I don't know why they would do that in particular, but the idea is just everything that we've seen. We look up into the sky and we see all that stuff. and another way to explain that is that in the in Hebrew literature, they'll oftentimes actually describe something before they'll make a broad stroke and say, this is what happened, and then they fill in the details. So when it says in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, then the following verses actually tell how he did that. So that's all just talking about the things that we see. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and maybe we should go into that sometime. But yeah, there's different levels. You know, you've got the sky, and then basically the atmosphere. Of course, then there's heaven. That we know of. So, yeah. So we'll have to kind of pick up there and finish off there next time. Thank you, guys.